Welcome to Downshift, everyone. My name is Paulo.
And my name is Matt, and we have now spent a week with the Mercedes-AMG GLB35. And this is actually our first press loan, so thank you to MB USA for hooking it up. It's been a fun week. Before then, we've always tested cars with our friends at Mercedes-Benz in Milwaukee, and last week I actually spent an entire day with the GLB35 here in black. So we're pretty familiar with this car, and today we're going to go over the best and the rest. Who does a better turkey call? Do yours?
You do.
All right, in the comments, who's got a better turkey call? This is the most Wisconsin test we've ever done. The first thing we're going to talk about is price, and it's a very Mercedes-Benz thing. They always kind of play at the upper tier of the German trio between Audi and BMW. The GLB35 here starts at $60,000, and as tested with everything on it, we're closer to $70,000, like $68,000, mid $68,000. And for what you're getting here, that just is a lot of money, but I guess you'd expect that from Benz. But how does that compare to something like, I don't know, a BMW X2?
Funny you say that, Matt. So yeah, the X2 M35 starts at $52,000, and then the X1 M35 also starts at, I believe, $50,000. So a little bit more expensive than some of the other competitors.
Yes, and it always kind of will be. That's a very Mercedes thing, but I will say I like the look of this more than the X2, but we'll get to styling in a little bit. And then there's just a handful of things that I think aren't exactly what I would be expecting if I was going to buy a Mercedes. Presumably, with this segment of vehicle, you're getting an introduction to Mercedes. It's your first Mercedes, you're excited, you're on a luxury tier vehicle, and you expect kind of the pinnacle, the prestige. And there's just a couple things on the interior that aren't what I would classify as prestige. Specifically on the door card here, you've got this handle. I hope you can hear that. It's just kind of creaky. There's a lot of plastics in the cabin here. You know, some of your center console does kind of creak a little bit. You've got black plastic all over the place. A lot of this is really nice, but you do get a little bit more plastics and a little bit more creak in here than I think I would like from my Mercedes. Okay, try it again.
Hey Mercedes. Hey Mercedes.
How may I help you?
Be built better.
You're sitting in a Mercedes-Benz. You're doing fine.
Wow. She said get over it. And then just to round out before we talk about all the great things going on, there's just a couple weird things that struck me this week. Like for one, you go into your comfort setting here and you have seat kinetics, which is supposedly supposed to kind of move you around a little bit during a drive. It's not a massage, but just to keep your blood flowing. But when I turn this on, what it's basically doing, and I couldn't tell because it's moving so slow, but it's kind of just like putting the seat a little bit closer like this, almost folding you in half, but it does it so slow that it's indiscernible. So only when I turned it off and the seat returned to this position faster is when I noticed that it was doing something. You also have this little console down here because for 2024s they've removed the little wrist rest and the trackpad, so you have this storage space now, but it's just not quite big enough for a phone. I know this is an older phone, but even on my newer phone it doesn't exactly fit. And then finally, and I think my most irritating thing, is the fact that here, despite all the buttons on your steering wheel, you do not have a dedicated next track button. You've got media controls over here. You can control things with these little dials here, and you can have your media up here on your center infotainment, or your gauge cluster, but you have to just swipe right, and if you go to a different screen, which is incredibly easy to do, you won't have it work. So I would like to see a next track button on the steering wheel. And I do want to talk about the size a little bit because it has played weird tricks on my mind, because there's a couple things going on. For one, it rides low like a hot hatch, but it's supposed to be an SUV. You can see the plastic cladding here, but it's 50 millimeters lower than a normal GLB, so that gives it kind of hot hatch, I guess, approach and ride to it. You open the door and you step in, you don't have to jump up into it like an SUV, you kind of just slide into it, again, more like a hot hatch. You sit in there and you have loads of headroom, enough headroom for a giraffe, and you've got loads of space this way. It's only about 3 inches longer than something like a Civic Type R. And I even have enough headroom, if I was a few inches taller, I could sit comfortably in the back seats. I have a huge trunk, and you could even option a third row in a subcompact, because that's how well they've managed the space inside. Now, I wouldn't get the third row because it's going to be uninhabitable for anybody with legs, and then you lose a bit of trunk space, but still, it's amazing what they've done with the space to take something that is this small, occupies this small of a footprint, and make it feel so big on the inside. But what was your thought driving around in this thing?
Yeah, I kind of had the same thoughts. It really gives me hot hatch vibes, and I think it's really a unique look, and you kind of have to take a second look at it when you first see it for the first time. But it does look like it's just lower, but that's exactly how it comes from the factory. But yeah, once you step inside, the space is just enormous.
And then we'll talk about what this thing is like to drive a little bit harder. because it is the spiciest GLB that you can drive. It's the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with hybrid assist now. Makes 302 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. It's not the 45 motor. It's not the 45 from like the GLA, the signed true AMG. But it does still feel kind of good. It's a little bit muted for my taste, but my wife loves the sound. She says it sounds better than my BMW. It is good for 23 mpg combined rated, but to be honest, we went out to dinner and drove around town last night, didn't even do any highway, and we were getting like 28 mpg, so I think it is a bit better than that. You do get the 8-speed dual clutch, which again, isn't as much of a benefit at like slow casual driving, but when you're on it, the shifts are rapid. It's really, really rewarding. And you get this like interesting kind of quirky, it's not a thunk, but it's like an interesting noise that you get on the upshift when you're really on it. But it's brilliant, it's fast. You do get 4MATIC all-wheel drive, like I mentioned before. It does have a bias towards the front, but grip has never been a problem. And then of course you've got the AMG sportified chassis with additional bracing, adhesives. You've got additional suspension tuning. It's kind of got the ride control sport suspension, whatever that means, but it's adaptive, so it does firm up and then soften back a little bit in comfort mode. This GLB35 also rides 50 millimeters lower than the standard GLB, and you do feel that. I know that I'm in an SUV mentally, but it does kind of feel hot hatchy at times, and I think that's really nice about it. You've got good brakes, you've got great tires, it's quick, it does 0 to 60 in like about 5 seconds. The turning doesn't have a lot of feel, but it's got a decent amount of feel. It's kind of got feel consistent for the era that we're in here. It's got great grip around mid-corner. It does push a little bit at the limit, but it's pretty nice. There's a good amount of theater. There's a good amount of drama. I really like the DCT when you're on it. It's fun to drive hard. And we are going to talk about the interior more from a visual perspective and experiential perspective rather than a build quality perspective. But here, I think Mercedes does the best between she's ready for it, between Audi and BMW, because you just get a lot of visual drama. The cabin looks great. It has been refreshed for 2024, so they've kind of cleaned up this area down here. You don't get that little wrist rest with the touchpad anymore, so you've got a little bit more storage down here. Your graphics have been kind of refreshed and reskinned. Everything looks great, including this steering wheel. I do think the AMG steering wheel is my favorite, despite some of the touchy buttons. This is really, really satisfying to use, and I think it just looks cool. And then in terms of your seats, this is a almost $1,500 option with, I think, classic red and black. You can get black on black, and then you do also get some carbon fiber accenting on your dash and your door cards. This is a free spec choice. You can pay $150 and get this switched out to like a graduating Mercedes-Benz star design that works in tandem with the ambient light. And the ambient light is the best in the business. They've got multi-different colors. You can have either a single color or multiple different colors going at once. Malibu Sunset, Miami Rose, they're my favorite. They kind of pulse and wave, and they also have different effects. So things like climate, if you want to make it warmer in the car, that vent is going to go red. If you want to make it colder, that's going to go blue. You can kind of see it here. But it just works out really, really well. You do get heated seats as standard. You can option cooled seat, and you can option a heated steering wheel. And I also do like the Burmester audio system that you get here included.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would say that is really aesthetically pleasing is the double
panel roof.
Double panel roof that you get here makes it even feel larger inside, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I agree with the sentiment. The ambient lighting is awesome. The experience here is great, and the steering wheel is a W.
And we've been talking about it a couple times throughout the video, but we are going to talk more in depth about the trunk. Now watch what I do with my foot. I'm going to give it a swipe, and it says that you're not supposed to be able to swipe with this thing. You're supposed to just go in and out, but it'll work both ways, which is great. I love things that work both ways. I do also like the fact that you have two handles here. They each have a little hook so you can hang stuff. You've got close and lock, which of course you would expect. And then you have a huge, huge trunk. What are we looking at? It's like 22 cubic feet of space. Now this is without the third row. You can option for that $850, a third row. I would skip it personally, but when you have the 2-row here, you've got some hangers here, you've got a nice privacy cover, and it is just big. You can lift up the cargo area, then you've got some additional storage down below. But you've got netted bins and kind of classic German trunk stuff, a little bit of whatever this is for books or literature because you're a well-read individual, because you own a Mercedes-Benz. but it's a great sized trunk with the seats down. You're looking at like 62 cubic feet of space. It is just huge, incredibly practical, so you'd love to see it from the GLB. And we are going to talk rear seats because they are pretty impressive here. Now, I've been saying again the whole video that this is incredibly spacious. Now, I'm 6'1", sitting behind myself. I've still got several inches of knee room. If I wanted more, I can get more because the seats actually slide and they also recline with a little tab here on the side. So really, really practical, loads of headroom. I wouldn't even hit my nub if I had my hat on. You're welcome, Paulo. But I do have air vents back here, not a dedicated climate zone, but some air vents. I've got a little bit of storage here. And then I do have 2 USB-Cs and kind of a house outlet, in addition to some storage pockets back here. The thing that I don't necessarily love is I do feel like I'm sitting very high up, and the seats I kind of wish would come up a little bit to support my thighs. I do feel like I'm almost leaning forward a little bit in these seats. But the space itself, totally practical for even 6-footers or other adults. And I do want to touch on the styling because for me, it's one of my favorite things about the car, but it's interesting because my wife doesn't like it, my dad doesn't. I thought this was universally loved. I really like the shape of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I like that it's a bit more boxy.
Yeah, just generally styled. I think it looks really good. Now, some people have gone so far as to say it looks like a baby G-Wagon. That's a bit of malarkey. I don't know if I'm on board with that, but I do like the fact that it looks aggressive. It's boxy. It's kind of classic SUV look. It's also draped in a really nice silver, and it better be really nice because it's $750, which is a little bit much for a silver, I think. But if you're into German heritage, this is kind of like racing or silver arrow silver, and I do like that. On the hood, you do have the Falterbach badge here rather than the Mercedes star. I like that little extra detail that you get from the AMG. You get the vertical AMG grille with the AMG designation here, and part of the facelift for 2024 is you do get new running lights with 2 little individual beams. A more aggressive front fascia, very AMG, and then blacked out for the night package is your front splitter. You do have the power dome hood here with a little bit more creasing, and this is where it reminds you that it is an SUV. Even though it does ride a little bit lower and does feel a little hot hatchy, you do have black cladding on your wheel arches, and you do have 20-inch wheels, Continental Sport Contact 6, pretty good grip. They're also as wide as 255, so wider than my tires. I got you before you're gonna say it. But I do like these wheels. These are $1,300, $1,350. Satin black finish, classic AMG wheel with the silver brake caliper. It's a very classic AMG, and I do like that. Turbo 4MATIC on the front fender, as you would expect. Night package here for your window treatments and your wing mirror. But look at the profile. I think it looks really nice. It's that boxy shape. You do have a little bit of a dip up here, which I think looks good. Black roof rails. And then around the side, the taillights have also been revised for this 2024 facelift. They're a little bit cleaner. And you can even see in the plastic housing, you have the Mercedes star. And not just here in your plastic housing, but you also have Mercedes stars on all of your windshield wipers, your back windshield and your front windshield. You've got some aluminum kick plate here for your trunk. You do have a more aggressive black diffuser back here and dual exhaust. I really like the styling. What do you think overall?
I like it. It's funky, unique, boxy, short.
I'm into it all. And one of the last things we're going to talk about before we go for a drive is another place that Mercedes really shines, and that's with the tech suite. And I'm not going to go into every little thing because it would take a half hour because there's a lot of stuff in here, but we'll start with some of the main things. You don't get a head-up display on this one. You can option it. We had it in the Mercedes-Benz of Milwaukee car that I drove last week. You do get a fully digital instrument cluster. It's 10.25 inches, and there's a bunch of different screens. You've got a dedicated off-road screen, which I think is hilarious, as we've talked about how this isn't exactly off-road oriented. You've got an assistance screen, navigation screen, a very understated calm screen, and it does some things to adjust the rest of it. But you also have 2 dedicated sport-oriented ones, Sport and Super Sport, which is super sporty, of course. But then into your center screen here, it's very nice, very snappy, loads of different stuff. We're going to start from the far end. You do get wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You've got your AMG performance pages with 4 different pages in here. You've got suspension, compression, and rebound, steering angle, and a bunch of other stuff. You've even got a G meter if you want to put that up there. I like this. It's like a live telemetry readout of your engine, torque, and horsepower. It shows you in a wave. It's really, really cool. And then this, your IWC Schaffhausen stopwatch, also could function as a lap timer. So presumably you start it, and then you're going to time your lap, but you better have a nice long straightaway for your start finish, because to try to find it, summon the button to stop it, and then stop it is going to be a little bit difficult, but at least you have it. Then we'll go back up here. You do have a dedicated off-road screen, which is going to show you your elevation and then your pitch, roll, yaw, all that sort of stuff. Again, a little bit funny in this. Your comfort is where you're going to control your seat kinetics and your ambient light, which we've talked about. But then the apps screen, I think, is a little funny because you come over here and you've got Sudoku, you've got trivia, you've got like their Candy Crush, you've got almost like an air hockey billiards type thing, Yahtzee, a whole bunch of stuff. This isn't an EV, but you've got loads of games that you can play in here, which is just kind of wild. And if you swipe down from the top, you've got different shortcuts and favorites. Throw it in reverse, you have a 360 camera even in one of the smaller and less expensive options in the Mercedes-Benz lineup, and they do a very good 360 camera with loads of different views. And at that point, I think we've covered most everything. Let's go for a drive.
Oh, there we go.
Ooh,
Race start active. Wow.
Those are some shifts, man.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, like this thing from 20 miles an hour to 60 is so much fun. It's a riot.
It's real life.
Yes.
I do like that. It's very hot hatchy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very usable and fun on the street, day to day.
Yeah.
I do like that. Let's start with some things that we don't like first, and then we'll get to the stuff that we do like.
Do you want to go first?
No, I don't want to go first.
Okay. First thing that I don't like, and I am sure it's on your list too, is the interior build quality. Just the creakiness of it. Like the way it visually looks and the interactions and like the tech and all that stuff is, and the ambient lighting, like it's all incredible. It's amazing. It feels luxe when you're sitting in here,
Yeah.
but just the quality, specifically, honestly, just the doors was my biggest problem. It's just, it doesn't scream AMG Mercedes-Benz to me.
It kind of feels like, and this is a weird analogy, but it almost kind of feels like a flipped house.
Yeah.
Where it's like, visually it looks
I personally feel
stunning.
attacked. I feel attacked right now.
Visually it looks perfect, but you get into the weeds and you start like, oh, they cut a corner here.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not as nice as maybe I'd want it to be.
You need a brand new sump pump in the basement.
You need a brand new sump pump. Maybe you have to reinforce a basement wall or something. I don't know. Maybe you've got ants in them. I don't know. But like, that's kind of the vibe that I get.
Yeah.
But yeah, visually it looks
That's a good
great.
analogy.
And we're kind of like, yeah. Anyway.
I feel like you can maybe justify it, but just the price, a lot more expensive than some of the other competitors out there.
Classic Benz, yeah.
Yeah. I thought you
Oh,
were,
anything more? No, yeah.
I thought you were going to kind of add more as to why.
I think, yeah, no, $70,000, approaching 70 grand for something like this with 300 horsepower, it is a lot. Now, it does justify it a little bit in the sense that it is a huge and practical cabin, huge trunk, huge back seat, even for 6-footers plus, but it is a lot of money when you start to compare it with the other things that it does, or is supposed to compete with on paper. You know, an X1 M35i or something, you know, an Audi, do they make an SQ3? I don't know. But something like that.
Yeah. Let's talk about our likes.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I like the visual drama. The things that AMG does well is, especially at night when you get the ambient light going, you get a little, you know, shifting on the DCT, you get a little bit of that engine noise coming in. It's a very emotional experience, and I love AMG for that. It just really is. It's exactly what I'm wanting. There's a bit of sound, there's a bit of snap, great ambient light, changes colors. Like, it's a very emotional thing to me, and I just like that.
Yeah.
I also like the styling. I think it looks good from the outside. I like this silver. I don't like having to pay $750 for it, but I like this silver. I would get this silver. And I liked this silver when it was on the SL55 that I tested. It's that silver arrow kind of German, you know, race car thing that kind of bleeds into this that I think plays to me, and I like that.
Yeah, I don't think I would get the silver, but I agree on the styling. It is one of the things that kind of encapsulate me about it. Is it's hard to kind of look away once you set your eyes on it. I feel like I just have a thing for lowered SUVs because I saw a Mach-E that was lowered, and I was like, I like that. I want that. Interior space, you mentioned it as well. I think it's incredible how big it feels, especially when you're in here, compared to what you think it might feel like when you're actually on the outside of it for the first time. And then the third thing that I really like is I do really like some aspects of the AMG-ness that we kind of talk about. The adaptive suspension is really good. The DCT is really snappy, which I love. You have a nice upshift noise. I don't really know. It sounds a little bit synthesized.
Sounds pretty synthesized, yeah.
But
it's like curated and bought in a store.
It's like really, it's actually...
Like I've heard that noise from something else,
me.
like a button that I've pushed in here, I've heard that noise.
Yeah, it handles really well. You have some thick tread on here. I think we said 255. I think similar experience to the X6 that we had last week. this thing can do things that you don't necessarily think a SUV should do, and I feel like it drives more like a hot hatch than an SUV.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It does feel hot hatchy. When you start to get towards the limit of it, it does remind you that it's all-wheel drive, but it's front-wheel drive based.
Yes.
But that's also kind of hot hatchy, so
Yep.
you know, I think it kind of works that way. But those are, I think, my thoughts. If you have anything else?
No, yeah, it was a really fun week to spend with this thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I will thank Mercedes-Benz for giving us our first loan, so thank you to you guys. We had a lot of fun in your GLB35. Thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Let's send them out with a little rev. It's a good DCT.
It is. It's really good.
See you later.